Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. In the heart of Tianyan Magic Academy, a feeling of dread swept through the hollowed hall. Word had spread like wildfire. One of the most ancient and powerful scrolls had been stolen. The whispers grew louder, with each passing minute buzzing from student to student, professor to professor. The scroll, said to contain forbidden spells capable of unimaginable destruction, was the most guarded artifact in the entire academy, locked away in the deepest section of the archive. Zhang Zhuolong stood in the middle of the courtyard, frozen in place as the accusations reached his ear. A group of students, huddled together near the fountain, pointed in his direction. He could hear them muttering, their eyes narrow with suspicion. Ule was no stranger to rumors. He was the type of student people like to talk about, the one with a knack for getting into trouble, always experimenting with spells far beyond his training. He hadn't done anything wrong this time, but that didn't seem to matter. You really think he could stolen the scroll? A tall, slender boy whispered to his friend, eyeing Xgalong as though he were a criminal already caught in the act. Who else? The guy's been sneaking into the archives for weeks now, the other replied, a sneer curling his lips, always trying to prove he's smarter than everyone else. Xgalong clenched his fists, trying to block out their word. He knew where this was heading. Didn't he steal the scroll? Yes, he'd been in the archives recently, but it was for research. No one seemed to care about that small detail. As if on cue, a group of senior professors appeared at the entrance of the courtyard, led by the stern figure of Professor Senthi, head of the disciplinary council. His gaze swept across the courtyard, his eyes locking onto Xgalong with unsettling certainty. Xgalong's professor's voice boomed, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. Shu are hereby summoned to the council chambers immediately. Xgalong felt a cold knot of dread twist in his stomach. He wanted to protest, to tell them that he was innocent, but the words caught in his throat. There was no use arguing, not here, not now. The council chambers were as imposing as ever. Tall stone walls, lined with ancient tapestries, loomed over the circular room. At the center stood a marble dais, where the council members sat, their expressions severe. The room was eerily quiet, save for the faint rustling of parchment, as Professor Sek reviewed the accusation. You have been accused of stealing the lost scroll from the archives, Professor Sias said, his voice cold and detached. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Xgalong stared at the floor, searching for the right word. I did take it, he said, forcing himself to speak with as much conviction as he could muster. I've ever been in the archives, yes, but I was researching for my project. I would never steal something like that. A few of the council members exchanged skeptical glances, clearly unconvinced. Your reputation precedes you, Sir Xgalong, another professor added, his tone dripping with disdain. You've been caught meddling with restricted spells more than once. How can we trust that you wouldn't go after something like the lost scroll? I've made mistakes, but I am not a thief. Xgalong shot back, his frustration boiling over. If you give me a chance, I'll prove it. The council members conferred in hushed voices, their heads bent close together. Xgalong could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. He clenched his fists at his sides, willing himself to stay calm. Finally, Professor Sianik raised a hand, signaling the end of their deliberation. We will give you until the end of this week to clear your name, he said, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. If you cannot prove your innocence, you will be expelled from this academy and handed over to the authorities for further punishment. Is that understood? Xgalong nodded, the knot in his stomach tightening. He had less than 5 days to find the real thief and clear his name. It was a near impossible task, but he didn't have a choice. Jiao Tichuan found him shortly after the council meeting, waiting near the entrance to the student dormitory. She was one of the few students who hadn't turned her back on him. Xgalong had always admired her. She was quick-witted, confident, and one of the top students in their class. But most importantly, she was fair. If anyone could see through the lies surrounding him, it was Liu Qiuan. I heard what happened, Liu said, her expression serious. I don't. Can you believe you stole the scroll, Xgalong? But if you're going to clear your name, you will need help. Xgalong sighed, leaning back against the stone wall. Thanks, Qiuan. But I don't even know where to start. Everyone already thinks I did it, so like the entire academy's turned against me. That's because they don't know the full story, she replied, crossing her arms. We need to figure out who really stole the scroll and why there's more going on here than we realize. Ixalalong hesitated for a moment before nodding. You rewrite, but I can do this alone. Smiles slightly lucky for you. I don't tend to let you. We'll need more than just the two of us, though. This is bigger than anything we've dealt with before. I know just the person, Ixalalong said, a glint of determination in his eye. Wang Bio was exactly where Ixalalong had expected to find him in the academy's training grounds, practicing with the other warriors in training. Bio towered over most students, his broad shoulders and muscular build making him an intimidating figure. He wasn't particularly skilled in magic, but when it came to physical strength and loyalty, no one could match it. Ixalalong approached him cautiously. Hey, Bio, I need your help. Daniel paused mid-swing, lowering the massive practice sword he had been using. What's going on, Ixalalong? You look like someone soused you off a cliff. Ixalalong mimsed at the metaphor. I've been accused of stealing the lost scroll. Bao's eyes widened. What, that's so ridiculous. You wouldn't steal something like that. Tell that to the council, Ixalalong muttered. They were giving me until the end of the week to prove I didn't do it. I need your help. Bao didn't hesitate. Of course I'll help. What do we do? Hello stepped forward, outlining their plan. We need to find out who the real thief is. We'll start by going through the archives, again looking for clues. Someone had to leave a trail. Bao nodded. I am, and let's get to work. The group spent the next few hours scouring the archives, searching for any sign of tampering. The room was vast, filled with towering shelves that held thousands of scrolls, books, and artifacts. It was easy to see how someone could hide in the shadows, unnoticed among the endless rows of shelves. Ixalalong paced along the back wall, his eyes scanning for anything out of place, thus flipping through a book of ancient magical seals while Bejo stood guard at the entrance, watching for anyone who might try to interrupt them. Suddenly, Lu paused, her finger tracing a symbol etched into one of the shelves. Ixalalong, come look at this. He hurried over, his eyes narrowing, as he saw the faint mark carved into the wood. Yeah. Was a symbol. He recognized one associated with forbidden magic. This wasn't here before. Ixalalong muttered, glancing around. Whoever did this must have used it to bypass the security spells on the scroll. But why would someone go through all this trouble to steal a scroll and then leave behind such an obvious clue? Ixalalong shook his head. They were trying to send a message. Baal approached, his brow furrowed. What kind of message? Ixalalong didn't often answer, but one thing was clear: they were dealing with someone who wanted the scroll theft to be noticed. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous this became. As night fell, the group reconvened in the common room, going over what they had found. Lenjako, a quiet student of divination magic, had agreed to join them after some coaxing. Her ability to see hidden patterns and connections could be invaluable in solving this mystery. I saw shadows, Lin said softly, her eyes distant as she recalled her vision. Figures moving through the academy at night, heading toward the restricted section. But they were always just out of reach, like they didn't want to be seen. Ixalalong exchanged a glance with Liu. We were getting closer. Whoever stole that scroll did just do it for personal gain. There's something much bigger at play here. Lin shivered. I can feel it. Dark magic is involved, old magic, the kind we were warned about. Sina's along Selman raced. We need to find out more about the headmaster's involvement. He has access to the restricted sections. What if he knows more than he's leaning on? I've heard rumors about the headmaster's research. Some say he's been obsessed with unlocking forbidden spells for years. Then we'll start with him, Ixalalong said, standing up. We don't really have much time. Let's pay the headmaster a visit. The night was eerily quiet as they approached the headmaster's private quarters. The air crackled with the faint hum of protective spells, but Ixalalong was determined. With Yu by his side and Bao standing guard, they carefully made their way inside. The headmaster's study was filled with ancient tomes and relics, but it wasn't too long before they found what they were looking for. Hidden behind a stack of books was a small locked chest. Liu cast a quick unlocking spell, and the chest creaked open, revealing a collection of scrolls. At the bottom was a piece of parchment marked with the same symbol they had found in the archive. Ixalalong's so hot pounded in his chest. This was the proof they needed. But before they could take another step, the door to the study swung open, looking for something. The headmaster stood at the doorway, his eyes narrowing as they darted between Exalong Louis and the opened chest. His usually composed demeanor was replaced by a sharp edge of suspicion, his voice low and controlled as he spoke. "I asked you a question," he repeated. "What are you doing in my study?" Espel's eyes pulse quickened, his mind racing for an explanation. Wei shot him a glance, and he knew they had to tread carefully. "We came to ask you something," Exalong began, trying to keep his voice steady, "about the scroll that was stolen." The headmaster's expression did soften. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with a soft click. "You've been accused of stealing that scroll, have you not?" He gestured to the chest, his brow furrowing as he noticed the parchments they had uncovered. "And now you're rifling through my private belongings. Not the best way to prove your innocence." Zong Exanex. Mikuri stepped forward, her tone measured. "We found this," she said, pointing to the symbol on the parchment. The same symbol was etched in the archives, near the place where the scroll was stolen. "We thought—" The headmaster sighed, gaze hardened. "You thought what? That you'd accuse me of being involved?" His voice grew colder, and the air in the room seemed to grow heavy with a barely restrained power. "I've served this academy for longer than you said in a lie. Do you really think I would risk everything for a stolen scroll?" Exalong's eyes locked on the headmaster's egg. "We don't think you stole it," he said quickly, his voice resolute. "But we know something's going on. We know this symbol is tied to forbidden magic, and someone wants that scroll for a reason." The headmaster's side face remained impassive, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something Exalong couldn't quite place. "You were playing with forces. You don't understand," the headmaster said slowly. "Leave this alone. The theft of the scroll is dangerous business, far beyond the scope of your childish game." His fists clenched at her sides. "This isn't a game," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "Shh. Exalong is going to be expelled. If we don't figure this out, and we're not going to stop just because you tell us to." The headmaster's lips pressed into a thin line. For a long moment, the room was silent, the tension thick in the air. Finally, he sighed, a hint of weariness creeping into his posture. "You're persistent," he said quietly, his gaze shifting to the open chest. "Very well, but know this. The scroll was stolen by someone who seeks to unravel everything we have worked to protect. If you continue down this path, you will be drawn into a conflict that will change you whether you were prepared for it or not." Exalong swallowed hard. "We already in it?" The headmaster regarded them for another long moment before he finally relented. "There is a name," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Master Wee." Caspress hitched. "Master Wee. The Master Wee," he said, "the legend. A ghost story." "It's very real," the headmaster said, "grimly banished from this academy years ago for attempting to harness forbidden magic. If he so returned, it sent because he sought after the power he never finished unlocking." Exalong exchanged a glance with Louis, his heart racing. This was bigger than they had imagined. "If Master Wee has the scroll," the headmaster continued, "then you will need more than luck to stop him. He's that dangerous cunning, and he hesitate to destroy anyone who stands in his way." "Do you know where we can find him?" Exalong asked, his voice tight with urgency. The headmaster hesitated before nodding. "There's an old tower abandoned for decades. It lies beyond the eastern hills, shrouded in magic. If Master Wee is hiding anywhere, it will be there." Exalong felt a surge of determination. This was their chance, their only chance to clear his name and stop whoever was behind the theft. He nodded at the headmaster. "Thank you, we will handle it." The headmaster's eyes darkened. "Be careful. You have no idea what you're up against." The journey to the tower was treacherous. The eastern hills were known for their unpredictable magic, the very air thick with enchantments that twisted the landscape into strange, unrecognizable shape. The path seemed to stretch endlessly before them, each step pulling them deeper into the unknown. Wang Bayo trudged ahead, his massive frame easily navigating the rocky terrain. Bloody followed close behind, her eyes constantly scanning the horizon for signs of danger. Exalong and Lingerie brought up the rear, the weight of what lay ahead pressing heavily on them. "This place gives me the creeps," Wang Bayo muttered, wiping sweat from his brow as they approached the base of the tower. It loomed before them, a crumbling structure of stone and magic, its walls covered in arcane symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Lingerie voice was barely a whisper. I can feel it, dark magic. It's everywhere. Excellalong clenched his jaw, steeling himself for what was to come. Stay close, he said, his eyes narrowing as they stepped through the entrance. Inside the tower was a labyrinth of twisting corridors and ancient chambers. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, and the walls hummed with the faint echo of powerful spells long forgotten. They moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing through the empty hall. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every flicker of light a potential danger. But Jaxalong kept his focus sharp, his mind racing as he pieced together the clues that had led them here. Then from deep within the tower came the sound of movement, slow, deliberate footsteps, growing closer with each passing second. Get ready, Liu whispered, her hand tightening around the hilt of her wand. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man draped in dark robes, his face obscured by a hood. His eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, and in his hand, he held the stolen scroll. Master Wei, Excellalong breathed, his heart pounding in his chest. The old man's lips twisted into a cruel smile. You've come a long way, boy. But you were too late. The power of this scroll is already mine. Excellalong's mind raced. This was it, the moment they had prepared for. But facing Master Wei, standing before him with that much raw magic at his fingertips, felt like staring down a storm. Give it back, Excellalong said, his voice steady despite the fear of yelling at him. You don't know what you were dealing with. Master Wei's laughter echoed through the chamber, cold and menacing. Oh, I know exactly what I am dealing with, child, and soon so will you. Without warning, he raised the scroll, chanting an incantation in a language Excellalong didn't recognize. The air around them crackled with energy, and a surge of dark magic shot toward them, filling the room with an oppressive, suffocating force. Now, Excellalong shouted, and in an instant they sprang into action. White Badge charged forward, using his brute strength to push through the magical barrier Master Wei had created, unleashed a flurry of spells, her magic crackling like lightning as she targeted Master Wei's defenses. Excellalong, his mind racing, focused on the scroll if he could just get close enough to disrupt the spell. Lingerie stood back, her hands trembling as she struggled to focus on her divination magic. She could see the patterns in the magic, the threads that held the spell together, but they were too fast, too chaotic for her to grasp. Master Wei's power was overwhelming. Each spell he cast seemed to grow stronger, darker, feeding off the energy of the scroll. He was playing with forces far beyond anything Excellalong had ever encountered. But then in the midst of the chaos, Lin's eyes snapped open. The spell had signed to the scroll. If you disrupt the scroll, the spell will collapse. Shh. Excellalong didn't hesitate. He broke from the battle, darting toward the scroll with everything he had. Master Wei saw him coming, his eyes narrowing as he sent a wave of dark magic barreling toward him. But Excellalong was ready. With a flick of his wrist, he conjured a shield, deflecting the attack just long enough to reach the scroll. His fingers closed around the ancient parchment, and with a surge of magic, he tore it from Master Wei's grasp. Instantly, the room shifted. The dark magic that had filled the chamber began to waver, the oppressive force lifting as the spell unraveled. Master Wei's face twisted in fury as his power drained away, leaving him vulnerable. You think you've won, he snarled, his voice trembling with rage. This is only the beginning. The power of the forbidden magic cannot be stopped. But Excellalong wasn't listening. With a final burst of energy, he unleashed a spell of his own, sending Master Wei crashing to the ground, his dark magic dissipating into the air. The battle was over. Excellalong stood there panting, the scroll clutched in his hand. Around him, the tower seemed to breathe a sigh of relief as the dark magic faded away. Hope approached him, her eyes filled with both relief and admiration. You did it, she said softly. Wenbayo grinned, clapping a hand on Excellalong's shoulder. I knew you. Do pull through. Lingerie, still trembling from the intensity of the battle, managed a small smile. We all did it. Excellalong looked down at the scroll, the weight of what they had just accomplished settling over him. They had stopped Master Weir, retrieved the scroll, and uncovered the truth behind the theft. But more than that, they had proven that even in the face of overwhelming power, they could stand strong. As they made their way back to the academy, the morning sun breaking over the horizon, Exelon felt a sense of peace wash over him. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in days he knew they were heading in the right direction. The truth had been uncovered, his name was cleared, and the scroll had been returned to its rightful place. But deep down, Exelon knew this was only the beginning of their adventure.